Glad to see all of you brave the 18-degree weather this morning. Come out to be in the house of the Lord. It's a good day to be here. I want to thank you all for your prayers for my grandson. And Rick, I did get your voicemail last night. Thank you for your call and your prayers. And he's doing fine. It was more of probably a grandparent, mommy and daddy scare than it was an Oliver scare. But nonetheless, he's doing fine. So I want to thank you for that. This morning we have a special for you. On your screen, if it's still up, it's called Compassion Sunday. Many months ago, one of the gentlemen, him and his family have been here for a number of years. Kirk and Nanette Thomas have been very active in the ministries here. Nanette is our choir director. Kirk has served as an elder here at the church. He's served as the board president for a number of years. He's also a Gideon, so you'll see him here maybe 3 weeks and then gone a week. That's because he's speaking, and we're working on Bob Apple to let him alone a little bit so he can stay here and worship with his family. But no, he goes around the state and speaks for the Gideons. And we praise God for God's call in his life. And it's exciting to me to have him come here this morning and share with you a little bit about Compassion International and really to inform us and to educate us on what compassion is and what they do. And I think you'll be blessed this morning. And I also want to remind you, before he comes to speak, everything is as normal after his presentation. We'll have our fellowship time. We'll have our Sunday school class here, the Book of the Revelation, and the regular classes will run as normal at 10:30. But I want to remind you, next week, we will have a missionary here next week sharing with you. And so I encourage you to come out and be a part of that. I know him and his family are excited to be here and to share with you a missionary that we've supported for a number of years now. And to share with you what's going on in their missionary, in their mission, and support them. So I want to welcome Kirk this morning and have him come to the pulpit and share with him what God has laid upon his heart to share with us.
Good morning. I have to tell you, I'm humbled to be able to share with you this morning about the Compassion International and the ministry that they have. I shared with Jeff some time ago, I said, I feel like God's been tugging at my heartstrings a long time to do a presentation for Compassion Sunday here at Beavertown Bible Church. It's something that we've never done here. This is something new. But you know, he's been tugging for a lot of years, and for a lot of years I had a lot of reasons that I just felt like I couldn't share. Maybe it's nerves, and it's just shared. I speak all over the state for the Gideons, but every time I get behind the pulpit and share God's Word, I have to tell you, it's humbling, and it's nervous. But I do want to share with you a little bit about the ministry, but first of all, I wanted to share a brief message this morning and talk to you a little bit about the background of compassion. And I think it's the beginning of talking about a small story. And I want you to go back to a place called the Bloody Pass. And does anyone here remember what the Bloody Pass is? We'll talk about it this morning. But you see, at the time, thousands of years ago, this Bloody Pass in the Middle East was a narrow path. It was a twisty, winding path that led from Jericho to Jerusalem. And in this pass there were caves and many places for bad guys to hang out. And on that bloody pass, many people were harmed, thus its name, the Bloody Pass. Unfortunately, one day there was a man who journeyed on that path, and he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. He was attacked by bandits, and he was left for half dead along the roadside. They even took his clothing. Do any of you recognize this story, this parable? It's one of Jesus' parables of the Good Samaritan. And in fact, you know that we hear about the Good Samaritan, and a lot of times we hear that parable, and it's like, yeah, I know, it's do good for others. It's to help others. But this morning, I just want to slow down and take a moment just to get a little bit more in depth and take a hard look at that parable and see what God has to say to us about that. So if you turn to Luke, it's in Luke 10, and these will be on your screen. We're going to read from Luke 10, verses 25 to 37. I'll give you a chance to get there. In Luke 10, 25 to 37, it says, "And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tempted Jesus, saying, Master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And he said unto him, What is written in the law? How readest thou? And he answering said, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy strength, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. And he said unto him, Thou hast answered right. This do, and thou shalt live. But he, willing to justify himself, said unto Jesus, And who is my neighbor? And Jesus answered, saying, A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among the thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, and wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. And by chance there came down a certain priest. When saw him, he passed by on the other side. And likewise a Levite, when he was at the same place, came and looked on him, and he passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and he saw he had compassion on him. And he went to him, and he bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow, when he departed, he took out 2 pence, and gave to the host, and said unto him, Take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come back, I will repay thee. Which now of these 3 thinkest thou was neighbor unto him that fell among the thieves? And he said, He that showed mercy on him. Then said Jesus unto him, Go and do likewise. So when the man asked Jesus, What do I have to do to inherit eternal life? I mean, Jesus' first response was, Hey, you're the expert. You tell me. What do you have to do? And you know the law being the first 5 books of the Old Testament, Moses' law. He said, You know the law. What does it say? And then he referenced what Jesus cited in Matthew 22, where it says the greatest and the second greatest commandment. He answered, Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So when that man replied back to Jesus, Jesus said, Yeah, that's right. Follow those commands. But you see, that you realize you have a lawyer. You had this expert of the law who knew the law, and he still wanted to trip Jesus up. So he was testing Jesus. So he said back to Jesus, But I understand that, but tell me, who is my neighbor? And I can just imagine Jesus listening to that, and he starts off telling the parable of the Good Samaritan. And that's really the question I want you to consider today. Who's our neighbor? How do we show that we love our neighbor as much as we love ourselves? And I'd just like to go back and let's take a look at the story again, because here was a man that was beaten, left, laid to dead. And a rabbi and a priest come by, and they both pass on either side. And one time I read an article on, why did these wise men, why did they leave him there? And none of us really know, but one thought is, well, they were very important people. They were very busy. They didn't have time to take action. They didn't have time to get involved. And I think sometimes in our own world, we get busy in our lives. And it's very easy not to get involved. I struggle with that sometimes. And then another thought was, well, they're in the bloody pass. They come upon a man that's lying there alongside the road. Now think about that. If you're going through a bad stretch of town and you come upon somebody that looks like they maybe need, you want to help, but then at the same time, would you think of maybe your own safety? Is it a setup? Who knows what was going through these men's mind? But then a third man came along that was not a religious professional. He wasn't even Jewish. He was a Samaritan, and Remember, the Samaritans and the Jews were not friendly at all. But as you know, when the Samaritan looked upon this person laying there, he took immediate action. Jesus said he felt pity. He took compassion. And you see, and that's one thing I think about compassion. Sometimes we think of the word empathy. We feel for others. We feel their pain. But compassion is different. It's empathy with action. It's doing something about that feeling. So this guy, he takes immediate action. He gets his wine and his oils and uses antiseptics, cleans the gentleman up, even puts him on his own donkey, takes him to an inn, says to the innkeeper, you know what, I'm going to pay you for his care. Not only pay you for his care, but when I come back, if it costs more than I already gave you, I'm going to give you some more money. So that man took action. So what did Jesus really want to get across in this parable? And as I think about that, who is my neighbor? Because the expert in the law replied, when Jesus asked him that question, who is your neighbor? He basically said, the one who had mercy on him. Now let's fast forward to today. I think the same applies today as it did 2,000 years ago of who is our neighbor. And as I was preparing this message, I kept coming back to, as I went through the parable and studying it, I came back to something pretty simple. My neighbor is anyone that's in need that I'm capable of helping. And so how do I go about that? And there's a lot of missions and ministries. And next week, Jeff's talking, we're having another missionary next year, and this is another mission. There's a lot of opportunities. And I think my goal today is just to educate you more about Compassion International and what the ministry is. Do you know there's over 560 verses in the Bible that talk about God's people, what our responsibility is to God's people who are poor and oppressed. There's over 560 verses that deal with how we should handle the poor and oppressed. And I just wanted to share a few with you. If you go to Proverbs, and I believe these are going to be, well, I know they are. They're going to be on the screen. Proverbs 14, verse 31. And I'm not going to go through all 560 some. I'm only going to do 4. But if you look at Proverbs 14:31, it says, he that oppresseth the poor reproaches his maker, but he that honoreth him hath mercy on the poor. To paraphrase that, whoever is kind honors God. When you're kind to the needy, that honors God. If we look at Proverbs 21, if you turn to 21, go up forward a few chapters. In Proverbs 21, chapter 13, whosoever stoppeth his ears at the cry of the poor, he also shall cry himself, but shall not be heard. And then when we go to Isaiah 58, go to Isaiah 58, verse 10. And there it says, if thou draw out thy soul to the hungry, and satisfy the afflicted soul, then shall thy light rise into obscurity, and thy darkness be as noonday. I could go on and on and on about God's Word, not my word, but God's Word, talking about what God's people's responsibility is to the needy. So this morning, as we go forward, I think one of the things I want to talk about is one thing that we don't think about in our world today is 1/4 of the children born in this world, like some of the children I'm going to be talking today, 1/4 of them, life every day is like the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. It's the bloody pass. But the bandits aren't the bad guys, bandits like we think of them. The bandits are hunger, poverty, lack of education, disease. Those are the bandits. Do you know that about 27,000 young children die every day under the age of 5 because they don't have access to health care or proper nutrition? I want to share with you a story about one man, of how an event in his life changed his life and changed a lot of other lives. And I don't know, has anyone in here ever heard of the evangelist Everett Swanson? Everett was an evangelist, an American evangelist. And in 1952, he was on a tour preaching in Korea and Japan. And during that time, Everett was ministering to the troops, led thousands to the Lord Jesus Christ. And certainly at the end of his tour, he came back to the United States and felt like it was a successful endeavor, that he was there. And it was. Led thousands to Christ. He preached the gospel to our troops. But before he came, one morning he had an event that changed his, not only that morning, but changed his entire life and his ministry. You see, one morning he was out for a walk. It was Seoul, Korea. It wasn't split at that time. He was in Seoul, Korea. And he said he was out for a walk one morning, and it was early in the morning, and it was in winter. And he said he looked down the street, and he saw the sanitation workers out that morning. They were out picking up trash, and he said, look, picking up like piles of rags and things. And he said as he got closer, he realized that as they were approaching the piles of rags, they would kick them. And then pick them up and put them in the flatbed truck. Well, as he got closer, he realized those piles of rags were not piles of rags. They were small children. They were children that were orphaned by the Korean War. And they hovered together in the harsh Korean winters to get warmth. They begged for coins. And what happened was the sanitation workers would go out every morning. And he said when he saw them kicking the piles of rags, he thought it was because there were rats. He said, it wasn't uncommon to have rats in the streets in Korea. And he thought they were kicking the rags to make sure there weren't any rats before they picked it up. But what they were doing was that he kicked them, and if they stirred, they didn't pick them up. They left them. But that's how those children were waking up, to a kick. And if they didn't move, they were put on the sanitation truck and removed. That really changed Everett's life. He said, coming back to the United States, it just haunted him the whole way back, and he didn't know what to do. Now, you know what? There was Everett Swanson, just came off a tour of evangelism in Japan and Korea. Everett, again, very successful tour. And when he saw what he saw, he could have very easily said, you know what? Those aren't my children. There's not my problem. It's not even my country. But Everett didn't do that. You see, he came back, and he was haunted by that. And he came back, and he started to approach people and asking them for commitments, monthly commitments, that would help sponsor him to go back to Korea, where he started to go back, and he opened up orphanages to care for those Korean children. Today, that ministry is now Compassion International. So with that, I'd like, Travis, if you could share the first video to give you a little bit of insight into compassion.
My name is Kaylin Carolina Rodriguez. I'm 9 years old. I live in this house with my mom and dad and my 2 sisters. My mom gets sick a lot. It makes me sad and I cry for her. I pray for her because I want her to feel better.
We often don't have enough money for food, and life is hard. I do get sick a lot, and I worry what will happen to my children if I got really ill. Kaylin tells me, Mama, keep going. I want her to have a different life, not to live like this.
La historia de
Kaylin's story is one we see again and again in this community. Poverty is extreme here, and it is the children who suffer most.
And so, when we reach out to a child like Kaylin through our compassion program here at the church, it is really about changing a child's life, giving a child love, hope, and the things they need to learn and grow.
I've asked my mom why I've been waiting a long time and still don't have a sponsor. If I had a sponsor, I had them and tell them I love them.
The first time I saw Kaylin's picture, something about her just drew me in, realizing that here's a real child with a name and a family, and that I can get involved in that and change that story for her.
To a child in poverty, having a sponsor sends a message that it's truly life-changing. It says, you are known, your life matters, you are valued and loved.
I think Kaylin's major challenge would be feeling like she's worth anything. One of the worst things about poverty is that it steals from kids the one thing that God wants to bless them with so much of, and that's hope. So the fact that she's lived to the age of 10 in a hopeless situation it's not right. And so I'm so excited that her life is about to change.
Kaylin has been coming to the church for over a year without a sponsor. I know she has been praying for one, and today it is my great joy to give her the good news. God has answered her prayers.
I think Kaylin would be just overjoyed to be able to share that news finally with her family. I would imagine it would be a very joyful time. As Kaylin grows up through the Compassion Child Development Project, it'll change the way she sees everything. She will have confidence. She'll have, hopefully, a relationship with Jesus. I think she'll be crying some happy tears. There's no doubt that, while none of us can change the entire world, we can each change the world for one child in need, and there are children who need us. There's a child who needs you. So I would encourage everyone to rush out to that sponsorship table and look at those kids and find the one that needs you, because one of them does.
Compassion. It's a powerful ministry, something that my wife and I have been involved with since 2006. I just wanted to take you through some slides that I prepared, and Travis, you can bear with me. I'll work through them with you. But one of the things I think is important about Compassion International, and it's something that they refer to as the 3 C's. There are other child sponsorship organizations, but there's something distinctly different about this organization, and it's what they refer to as the 3 C's. They're Christ-centered, they're child-focused, and they're church-based. And what I mean by Christ-centered is the Great Commission is at the sole core of their mission, and discipleship is the core of all their programs. It's a very important part. Child-focused, meaning many of these children around the world go into, poverty can cause hopelessness and the feeling of hopelessness. And I think Compassion can bring hope to those children. And again, it's church-based. It's church-based, meaning that the church sponsors these programs. How does it work? There's church sponsors around the world for these programs. And it's one child, one sponsor. It's a one-on-one relationship with that child, and it's not just financial support. It's support of letters and prayers. And then the next slide shows how lives can be changed. Just providing a safe Christian environment for those children to go to. They hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. They receive an education. They get health care, hygiene training. Sometimes they need supplementary food. Currently today, Compassion International is in more than 26 countries. This morning I want to share a little bit about one called Burkina Faso. The reason I want to share a little bit, get into that, is Burkina Faso give you a little bit of information on that. It's a rural country. 90% of the people there are dependent upon farming. It's primarily a Muslim country. Malaria accounts for 29% of the children's deaths each year. If you go to the next slide, Travis, there's one showing children with water. One thing that this country struggles with is persistent drought. They also have low education levels. The next slide shows some pictures of their housing. It's inadequate housing. There's two pictures there depending on where they live in the country. It depends on the type of housing that they have. And the next slide shows children searching through the trash for food. The education services are scarce. They're insufficient. There's slides showing, I believe next showing a young child sitting there, as well as what one of the home environments look like. And then finally there's a slide, I believe, showing two women farming. Now think about that. Remember I said 90% of the people there depend on farming to be sufficient. But I also said that they have persistent droughts. So water access is an issue. In Burkina Faso, there are 221 development centers in that country through Compassion, where registered children can attend school. They have access to clean water, food, health care, and they also receive insecticide-treated nets for around their bedding at night. Plus, the thing that is great is the fact of they hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. They receive hope, not just for this world, but for eternity. I want to talk to you about one child. There's a picture coming up of Sonata. My wife and I first started sponsoring a child in 2006, a young Nicaraguan boy. But you know, as we got into that sponsor, my wife pretty much took over that sponsorship. She wrote the letters and had all the interactions. And through time, I felt led to sponsor a child. And Sonata is the child that I've been sponsoring since 2008. She was 4 years old, as I think the first picture shows. She was 4 years old. The next one just shows her a few years later. And then finally, the third picture I have of Sonata is she's now age 12. She'll turn 13 on December 31st of this month. She'll be 13. And we share letters and stories back and forth. I pray for her. She lives with her mother and her uncle. Her father's not in the picture. She lives with her mother and uncle and 3 siblings. Every now and then I'll have an opportunity. I mean, I have my monthly sponsorship, but I may send an extra check every now and then. And to show you the impact of that, you never realize what an impact can have. But one time I sent $25. When you think about $25 here, what's that get you? Well, she wrote back and was very appreciative and told me she bought a new pair of shoes and bought rice for her family. This past summer, there was a military coup in Burkina Faso. And during that time, Compassion sent me emails to keep me up to date and left me know that Sonata was safe. But there was a lot of turmoil in her country. And I think the next slide just shows some young girls writing letters to their Compassion sponsors. Her world was torn upside down with this turmoil in her country. And the next letter I got for her, the thing that she pointed out was to tell me about her studies about Jesus Christ and how she was praying for me. So I think for me it's the blessing that we get from helping others. Not only does God tell us what we should consider doing or command us, puts it in His commands that we should help sponsor the needy. But you know, we think of praying for them and helping them. She's helped me grow as much as more than I've helped her grow. Just to go to the next slide, talks a little bit about just poverty again, being a ruthless enemy of these children. And the next slide just shows some living conditions. And Travis, after that, we're going to go into the next video. just to talk about a little bit more about compassion. We can see some of the living conditions that these families and children live in. So you want to go ahead and pull up the next video.
A child is waiting.
A child is waiting.
There are children around the world waiting.
Children are waiting.
Gaano kahirap?
I live here with my family, my mom and dad, and all my brothers. I am the only daughter. Our home is built over a very dirty river, and when the storms happen, our home floods with water and garbage. This is a scary place when it gets dark. People get drunk and fight all the time. I do not go outside at night because I don't know what would happen.
Sponsor ko po si Ali and Nancy.
Even though I live in this place, I have been sponsored for 14 years by Arlie and Nancy. I call them Mom and Dad.
Mom and Dad.
Although we are countries apart, I know they chose me. They tell me, Eunice, we remember you. We love you. You are like our own daughter. Because of my sponsors, I had the opportunity to go to the compassion program at the church in my neighborhood. For all these years, my sponsors and my church have helped me to receive better food and medicine. With the help of my sponsors, I will be able to work, to help my own family. When I was 9, my compassion teacher shared Jesus with us, and that's when I accepted Christ. Even though I am poor, He has provided my church. He gave me sponsors who love me. God will never leave us. I want to share everything I have learned with kids who are like me. Other children who need sponsors because they also experience poverty. I want them to feel the joy of having a sponsor, to get a letter that says, I love you, you are special to me. With the help of our sponsors, we can grow up and finish our studies and learn how to live our faith in Jesus. I want to serve the Lord, and I won't stop serving Him because He does not stop loving me and taking care of me and my family.
There are children around the world waiting for a sponsor like you.
Like you.
Release a child from poverty in Jesus' name.
In Jesus' name. A child is waiting for you.
Just to close up here this morning, currently Compassion has 6,900 church sponsors worldwide. Currently, Compassion sponsoring has 1.2 million children around the world. So far this year alone, there's been almost 123,000 children that made decisions for Jesus Christ because of this ministry. One thing I did put on the screen about Compassion, I think it's important, in fact, because there's a lot of things out there in the world that aren't good. Charity Navigator, which is an organization that ranks different ministries and charities, gives Compassion a 4-star rating for the past 14 years. And they're rated in the top 1% of charities for financial accountability and integrity. So I don't think if you make a decision to sponsor a child, it's not money wasted. Again, there's children around the world, and it's $38 a month is what a sponsorship costs. And for that $38, I just have some slides that show, just a reminder, that you're the only sponsor for that child. You'll exchange photos, letters. You'll help that child feel loved and cared for. They get education, health care, but most of all, they learn about Jesus Christ that can give them hope for eternity. And I said to Jeff, I said, that's what really prompted me, because it's an opportunity to reach more for Christ, which is at the heart and soul of what we're all about. And I told Jeff, my goal this morning was, I don't know how many people here have heard about Compassion International before this morning. Some of you may already have sponsors. Some of you may never heard. My goal was to make you aware. I said to Jeff, my goal this morning was not to come here and try to pressure anyone or to feel, pressured about this. I just wanted to present a ministry that's near and dear to my heart, and I think it has an impact around the world for Christ. And so this morning after the service, during the fellowship time, my wife and I and Annette are going to be out. There's a sponsorship table. If you want more information, we actually have packets here this morning, and actually we can have available for the next few weeks. And Jeff, I'll talk to you. Maybe we can even leave something set up for a while. But if you have more questions, you can come talk to Nanette and I. You can look at the sponsorship opportunities that are there. One thing that they have, just to close, two brief things, is maybe you don't feel led to sponsor a child, but you'd like to make a donation. There's a catalog there where you can make donations from anything from a Bible to buy a goat. So there's a lot of different opportunities. And one of the things I just learned last week, and I didn't realize, does anyone in here use Amazon online to buy things? Yeah, a lot of people use Amazon. Do you know that if you go to Amazon Smile, that if you go into Amazon Smile, you can actually smile, not smell. That's my black log accent coming out. If you go to Amazon Smile and we go to place an order, if you click, there's a place that you can select Compassion International, and they'll actually donate part of I think it's a 0.5%. You think, what's 0.5%? It adds up if you know the volume that Amazon does. 0.5% is a lot. So it's another opportunity to donate. So with that, I just want to thank you all for allowing me to share. Jeff, thank you very much. God bless.
All right, now we get to preach. No, I'm just kidding. Kirk, thank you for your presentation this morning. And I know that he shared with me over and over again that his whole focus and his whole desire was to make you aware of Compassion. How many of you, prior to his presentation this morning, were aware of Compassion International? Not very many of you, but there are some here. His goal was not to make you feel obligated to sponsor a child. Now, if you go to Creation, the pressure's on down there to make you. They really want you to sponsor a child. But my wife and I have sponsored 2 children. We have 2 children, and one from Haiti, one girl from Haiti, and one girl from Africa. And we've been sponsoring the one, I think, from Haiti the longest. She's been in our family for 10 years, and the one from Africa for 8 years. And you're the only sponsor for that child. And the interaction that goes on between the parent and the child and the parent is a blessing. And Kirk said there's a lot of organizations out there. There are a lot of them. But there are none like Compassion. None like Compassion. Compassion's the best that we've found, and we certainly support the ministry. So I thank Kirk for his presentation. I thank God for laying this upon his heart. and impressing this upon his heart to share with us here, to educate us and to inform us about the ministry of compassion. I would encourage you during the fellowship time, during the half-hour fellowship time, to stop at the table. And if any of you feel like God is leading you to do that, you even get to pick your child. You get to pick your child that you want to sponsor, and it's a wonderful thing. So stop out and visit the table in the gymnasium when we depart from this. Tiara and Brittany and Hillary are going to close us in a song. I'm going to ask you just to sit where you're at. The words are going to be on your screen, and if you want to sing along, you can do so. But they're going to close us, our service out this morning with this final song called Follow Me. And if you have a need this morning, just because this is a special service, the altar is always open. If you want to come this morning and pray for these children, that would be a wonderful thing to do too. So as God leads you this morning, we encourage you to come as they close out our service.